Here are some of the best weapons in Warframe that you must try, but just a quick word before we start this video. This is not a tier list video, mind you, and all the weapons you will see in this video are based on my whole playthrough this year. Some are meta weapons, and some are just pure fun to play with and can still be good in steel path levels. This list may be subjective, and I would also want to know what weapons you are playing the most this year. So, let's begin with my obvious choice, the Incarnate Torrid. I don't know if this Incarnate weapon sits at the very top of meta weapons, but for me, this is a weapon that every Warframe player must have. The vanilla variant is good with galvanized setup, but the Incarnate variant is godly and can be considered as a universal weapon for almost all missions in the game. The main thing about this gun is that its Incarnate form transforms into a beam rifle similar to how Kuva Nukor works, and it allowed players to kill multiple targets without any penalty. I say this because nuker weapons has penalty and its area of effect damage can't take advantage of the galvanized status mod setup, which boosts any weapon's firepower drastically. For a beam weapon like the Incarnate form of Torrid, it can proc the damage boost of galvanized status mod, and the best part is, the weapon also has decent critical boost on its perk as an Incarnate gun, which makes it more deadly, as you can create a hybrid red crit build for the gun that melts anything in steel path levels and beyond. Finally, the gun has innate toxin, and you can combine this with electricity to form corrosive and then add heat in your build. To make it better, you can subsume Nourish in your Warframe to add viral and see everything dies with the Incarnate form of the Incarnate Torrid. It's just an amazing gun that everyone must have, and you have the weapon. It's really hard to put down as it's super fun killing enemies easily with its Incarnate form. Moving on, I would also like to talk about another beam weapon in the form of a secondary gun. This can be considered as an old weapon right now, but the damage of Kuva Nukor is nothing short of amazing. One of the best status primer also in the game that can be turned into an amazing killing machine. This secondary weapon can reach insane amount of status chance that it can be paired with any galvanized setup easily. In steel path levels though, especially when enemies scale to level 200, a specific setup is needed for the Kuva Nukor to make it melt enemies fast. The gun becomes a menace on these levels when you pair it with either Lavos or Sarin. The Valence formation boosts this gun's elemental damage and try to add Toxin to further improve its damage. The same thing with Sarin. Once you add Toxin to the Kuva Nukor, the weapon goes crazy. In terms of modding, I usually go with a galvanized setup paired with corrosive and heat. Remember that Kuva Nukor has innate viral and you can pick another element for this gun, which in my case I chose to have magnetic not just for Corpus but also for those units with Overguard. Then I go with the faction mod, then the Cascadia Flare, which happens to proc easily with this gun, and this gives you 480% bonus damage all the time. Another gun that I really enjoy is the Okukir, but not the simple variant, but the Sentient Surge variant of this weapon. Somehow similar to the Kuva Nukor, I also enjoy this gun with either Lavos or Sarin. The additional toxin damage really pairs well with the corrosive and heat build paired with the viral element from the Nourish ability. I have applied the same concept of modding and it works well with the Sentient Surge Okukir. The Cascadia Flare works great in building up the damage of the gun, and when the augment finally activates and at max strength, you will feel the power of this sentient gun and can easily melt steel path levels easily. However, like the Kuva Nukor, this gun struggles in killing steel path acolytes because of the low critical stats and it's super reliant on the status side of damage. Nonetheless, it can melt those enemies up to those units with Overguard and steel path levels easily. Moving outside of the beam weapon meta, I also want to include in this list the dual Toxicist, which is in my opinion, one of the best endgame weapons when paired with good Riven mod and defense stripping. This gun is insane and satisfying to use on its Incarnate form as it gains an auto-fire mode and the bullets ricochet to other targets, hitting multiple enemies in one insane burst. Unlike the beam weapons we have discussed earlier, Incarnate Dual Toxicist is a monster and can kill anything in the game. This Incarnate weapon charges its evolution through headshots though, but if practiced hard for precision in this game, then the Incarnate Dual Toxicist will be a rewarding weapon to use in steel path levels and even at endgame. If you prefer a sidearm though that's decent and easy to charge its Incarnate form, then look no further and try out the Prisma Angstrom. The Incarnate form of this gun is insane and very useful, especially in Effervo assassination mission. With one shot of the normal fire, the weapon will fully charge its Incarnate form, and you can switch into a fire mode that launches targets seeking fireballs that ricochet towards enemies. The damage of the gun is also insane, especially if you have a Riven with critical chance, critical damage, and multi-shot. And while the gun may seem like inefficient when it comes to ammo economy, it will not be a problem as you'll only use the normal shot to charge Incarnate by hitting any parts of the enemies. Then, the Incarnate form will be your main DPS, melting the health of enemies like they are made of paper. Now let's head back to primary weapons and talk about Kuva Ogres for a bit. Honestly, this is not a meta weapon, and it needs the Warframe buff called Fireball Frenzy from Ember to make it good in Steel Path levels. In fact, this whole Ember setup is created to make the Kuva Ogres a powerful weapon, able to nuke Steel Path enemies easily. With Nightwatch Napalm, the heat damage lingers for some time in the field, and the damage per heat stack gets huge with primary Merciless buff, coupled with Ember's heat damage bonus, Rhino's Roar, and the faction mod that further increases the damage over time. Aside from its fun nuking enemies with Kuva Ogres, it also got an awesome skin, which is in my opinion one of the best looking weapon skins in the game. Next, I would also like to add on this list the OG ceremonial Incarnate pistol named the Latum. This weapon may not be as efficient as Incarnate Torrid when it comes to charging its Incarnate form, but if you master the art of headshot in this game, then the Latum will kill everything just like the Incarnate Dual Tox Assist or even better. What separates the Latum from other Incarnate weapons is that it has this perk called Devouring Attrition that grants 2000% bonus damage to non-critical hits. If you have a Riven mod with negative critical chance paired with the negative critical chance perk called Elemental Excess, then you can turn this gun into the ultimate killing machine. By the way, Fimware has the same characteristic, which is basically the primary variant of Latum. You can also create a Devouring Attrition build for this weapon to gain 2000% damage. The only thing missing in my build is a negative critical chance Riven mod, and this will work flawlessly with the Devouring Attrition perk. While the Fenrir is better in terms of how many Incarnate bullets you can shoot, the Latum is slightly better as it got access to an insane list of secondary arcanes, just like Cascadia Flare. Another weapon that I really enjoy in Warframe is the Tenet Archiplasma. This is not another endgame weapon, but enough to kill Steel Path levels and enjoy the game. The Tenet Archiplasma is the Tenet variant of the Archiplasma with improvements to its damage, critical multiplier status chance, and longer damage fall-off range, along with its shots gaining the ability to ricochet off surfaces, but at the expense of slightly slower fire rate, reload speed, and lower reserve ammo. Aside from that, you can also select a second innate element aside from the innate radiation it has. Honestly, it's not the strongest weapon in this list, but it does the job done in Steel Path levels with the right build. The ricochet effect and the shockwave-like projectile is very satisfying to use. The next weapons on the list are melee weapons, and the first one is the Sampod's Duviri Hammer. This hammer has a unique mechanic that allows slam and heavy slam attacks to generate multiple shockwaves, ragdolling enemies and sending them flying. Honestly, the melee weapon is not that powerful on its own, but if you pair it with melee affliction, along with a Warframe that has good slash damage infliction or toxin damage such as Sarin, then this weapon becomes insanely powerful. The Sarin combo for the Sampotes is insane, as once you imbue toxin, you will be a heavy attacking machine that can nuke everything with one slam. I also love the Prisma Oma right now, which has decent hybrid stats and innate electricity, which allows you to pair it with the melee influence arcane that spread status is like crazy. Now, like any of my melee builds, the Prisma Oma becomes crazy with all the toxin coming from Toxic Lash and spreading throughout the map like crazy. Finally, another great synergy with Sarin is the melee Incarnate named Incarnate Dual Ichor. Now, this may be unfair as I always include Sarin in most of the melee weapons in this video, but this is how strong Sarin is with any melee builds, and the weapons I am showing you here are the ones that makes the Warframe better. In the case of Sarin, you can go with a gas build for the dual Ichor and then get the separate toxin from Sarin's Toxic Lash ability, and then use the Duriga Sentinel's Electro Pulse weapon precept to activate the effect of melee influence and spread the toxin just like the old Sarin back in the days. You can also put Nourish in the build to further improve the damage with Viral. Take note that all the weapons I have listed on this video are subjective. They are just based on my personal opinion, and because of this, I would also like to know what are the weapons that you enjoy the most this year while playing Warframe. Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you on the next one.